You tell yourself that you just need answers. You tell yourself that if you could just understand why it happened, or if you could have one final conversation, the noise in your head would finally stop. But the truth is much quieter and much more uncomfortable. You're not looking for answers anymore. You're looking for a way to regulate an emotion that you do not know what to do with. The memory of the person who left has become a tool your mind uses to process an open wound. It is not about them. It has not been about them for a long time. It is about the heavy, unresolved feeling you carry every time your mind wanders back to the past. Today, we are going to look closely at the real reason you cannot stop thinking about someone who is no longer there. We are going to break down the behavioral patterns that keep you trapped in mental repetition, and more importantly, how to step out of the loop without forcing yourself to forget. The modern mind is obsessed with the idea of closure. We are conditioned to believe that every story must have a clean ending, that every relationship must conclude with a perfectly logical explanation. When someone leaves, especially without clarity, the mind treats this open ending as a threat. It begins to loop, replaying old conversations, scanning memories for clues, and imagining alternate realities where things made sense. This is not a sign of your deep love, it is a mechanical response. Your brain is trying to solve an emotional puzzle that has no missing pieces. This relentless search for closure bleeds into everything you do. You wake up feeling heavy, your energy drained before the day even begins. You sit at your desk or drive your car, but your attention is miles away, negotiating with a ghost. You find yourself having imaginary arguments with someone who cannot hear you. Every time you engage in these mental simulations, you're not moving closer to peace. You are simply reinforcing the pathway of anxiety. You're letting the memory hijack your present reality. But here's the part people usually miss. Closure is not something someone else can give you. It is not an apology, and it is not a final text message. Closure is the personal decision to stop waiting for a better ending to a story that is already finished. It requires the quiet strength to look at the unfinished edges of your experience and decide that you do not need them to be perfectly smooth to move forward. You must stop trying to solve the past. When the image of that person appears in your mind, it rarely comes alone. If you pay close attention, you will notice a distinct physical sensation that arrives right before or right after the thought. A tightness in your chest, a dropping feeling in your stomach, or a sudden tension in your shoulders. The image of the person is just the surface. The real anchor keeping you tied to the past is that physical, emotional sensation. Your mind uses their face as a symbol for the unresolved pain you're carrying. Because you do not know how to sit with that raw physical discomfort, your mind quickly builds a narrative around it to make sense of the pain. It tells you that you are hurting because they left. It creates a story of abandonment, betrayal, or profound loss. This story gives the pain a name, but it also ensures that the pain never leaves. You become addicted to the familiar sorrow of their memory because it feels safer than facing the void of uncertainty. The cost is your daily presence. You become a spectator in your own life. The next shift is simple, but not easy. The next time the memory surfaces, do not analyze the person. Do not dive into the story of what they did or what you should have done. Instead, drop your attention directly into your body. Feel the tightness, feel the weight. Observe the physical sensation without trying to fix it, judge it, or push it away. When you separate the raw emotion from the story of the person, the memory begins to lose its powerful grip over you. There is a profound difference between remembering a past event and ruminating on it, yet most people confuse the two. Remembering is a passive, natural function of the human brain. You pass a coffee shop, you remember a date, you feel a brief wave of nostalgia, and you continue walking. Ruminating, however, is an active engagement. It is the conscious decision, however automatic it feels, to pull up a memory, step inside it, and try to rewrite the script. Remembering observes the past. Ruminating tries to change it. Ruminating destroys your capacity to handle the present moment. When you are caught in a rumination cycle, your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a memory and a current threat. Your heart rate elevates, your cortisol spikes, and your emotional reserves are depleted. You end up exhausted not from the physical demands of your day, but from the massive energetic cost of fighting a ghost. This mental exhaustion spills over, making you irritable, unmotivated, and disconnected from the people who are actually standing right in front of you. To break this pattern, you must establish an uncompromising boundary with your own attention. You cannot control what thoughts appear in your mind, but you absolutely control whether you offer them a chair and pour them a drink. When the thought arrives, acknowledge it neutrally. Tell yourself that it is just a memory, and then immediately redirect your focus to the physical reality of the present moment. This is not discipline. This is self-respect. You are choosing not to abandon yourself for someone who is no longer there. It sounds contradictory, but there is a strange comfort in the pain of missing someone. When you have thought about someone every day for months or years, that thought process becomes a core part of your daily routine. It becomes a familiar mental neighborhood. The human brain prefers a familiar pain over an unknown future. Stepping out of the mental loop means stepping into a space where they truly do not exist anymore. And for many, that finality is more terrifying than the suffering of holding on. This hidden addiction keeps you entirely stagnant. You might claim that you want to move on, that you're tired of hurting, but your actions tell a different story. You check their social media from a fake account. You listen to songs that you know will trigger the memories. You purposefully steer conversations toward topics that allow you to bring them up. You are continuously throwing fuel onto a fire you claim you want to put out. You are not a victim of your memories. You are their most dedicated architect. Breaking an addiction requires brutal honesty about what you are gaining from the habit. You must admit that holding onto their ghost gives you a false sense of connection. Once you see this clearly, the choice becomes stark. You can continue to invest your life force into an illusion, or you can face the quiet, empty space they left behind and begin to fill it with your own purpose. The truth is, the emptiness is not a punishment. It is the clearing required to build something real. When the pain of holding on becomes too much, the most common reaction is to try and force the forgetting process. You declare that you will never think of them again. You block their numbers, throw away their gifts, and violently push the thought away the second it arises. But the mind operates on a paradox. Whatever you violently resist, you permanently reinforce by treating the memory as an enemy you must defeat. You signal to your brain that the memory is highly important, guaranteeing it will return with more force. This internal war creates a state of constant hypervigilance. You become afraid of your own mind. You avoid certain places. You avoid silence. You keep the TV on at all times. And you drown yourself in work or superficial distractions just to keep the noise at bay. The tragedy is that your life becomes entirely organized around avoiding the thought of them. In your desperate attempt to be free of this person, you have inadvertently made them the master of your daily routine. The way out of this trap is counterintuitive. Stop trying to forget. Let the memory arise. When it comes, do not brace yourself for impact. Soften your posture. Let the thought float through the sky of your awareness like a cloud, without trying to anchor it or blow it away. You take away its power not by fighting it, but by proving to yourself that you can observe it without reacting. You thought you needed more motivation to forget. You needed less noise and more acceptance. The next part is quieter, but significantly more dangerous. You begin to use the memory as a baseline for your entire emotional state. You wake up, and before you even engage with the day, you check internally to see if the pain is still there. It has become an unconscious morning ritual. You are not holding on out of profound love anymore. You are holding on because the absolute emptiness of letting go terrifies you. The pain gives your day a predictable, familiar rhythm, and humans will always choose familiar pain over unknown freedom. Look at the cost of this predictable rhythm. You are bleeding energy into a void. By keeping this emotional channel permanently open, you have nothing left for your actual life. Your work becomes a mechanical routine. Your interactions with friends become shallow because you're constantly distracted by an internal monologue. You are physically present in a room, but emotionally, you are miles away, standing in the ruins of something that ended months or years ago. You are actively betraying your current potential, but here's the part people usually miss. Letting go is not about forcing yourself to feel happy. It is about learning to tolerate the emptiness without rushing to fill it with old pain. When you wake up and feel that void, you do not need to summon their memory to give yourself something to feel. You just let the void sit there. You go to work, you lift weights, you build your business. You let the unfamiliar silence be the new baseline. That is the beginning of emotional independence. Slowly, your attention starts to return, but the mind sets another trap. You convince yourself that they possess something you lack. You project all your unmet needs onto them, believing they were the only source of your confidence, your peace, or your drive. You view them as the missing puzzle piece to your character. This is emotional dependence disguised as romance. You are assigning them a godlike status in your mind, elevating them above your own ability to generate fulfillment. This delusion leads to a severe loss of personal power. When you believe someone else holds the key to your happiness, your daily habits deteriorate. You stop investing in your own growth because you secretly feel incomplete without them. You stop challenging yourself, you scroll through endless distractions, trying to numb the profound sense of inadequacy that comes from believing your best half walked out the door. The real damage was not the mistake of losing them. It was who you became after repeating that lie to yourself. You must forcefully take that power back. No one outside of yourself holds the missing piece to your character. Whatever confidence, joy, or stability you felt around them was generated by your own nervous system. They were just a mirror reflecting your own capacity back to you. You do not need them to access those states again. You must take complete ownership of your emotional baseline. Stop mourning the mirror and start recognizing the source of the reflection. The source has always been you. That is where the pattern repeats, feeding on your lack of focus. To escape the quiet moments when their memory hits the hardest, you flood your brain with cheap dopamine. You overstimulate yourself intentionally. You leave the TV on for background noise. You keep music playing constantly, and you scroll through timelines until your eyes burn. You are using constant stimulation as a barricade against your own thoughts. It is a desperate attempt to outrun a ghost by making your environment as loud as possible. The consequence of this avoidance is total cognitive exhaustion. You thought you needed more motivation, but you needed less noise. By refusing to sit in silence, you fry your attention span. You lose the ability to read a book, hold a deep conversation, or engage in deep work. You are so exhausted from constantly running away from your internal dialogue that you have no fuel left to construct a meaningful life. Your avoidance strategy has become a self-imposed prison of chronic fatigue and shattered focus. Peace does not come from escaping pressure, it comes from responding differently. You have to turn off the noise and face the quiet. Let the memory arise in the silence. Look at it without flinching and realize it cannot actually harm you. It is just an echo. When you stop running and finally sit still with the uncomfortable thoughts, they quickly lose their terrifying momentum. You reclaim your energy not by sleeping more, but by stopping the exhausting internal sprint away from your own mind. This is where most people confuse comfort with progress. You think you're moving on, but you secretly keep a back door open. You maintain a tiny, quiet sliver of hope that one day they will realize their mistake and return. You leave breadcrumbs, a lingering text, a watched story, a casual check-in. This is the mechanism of false hope, and it is the cruelest form of self-sabotage. It allows you to pretend you're walking forward while your head is firmly turned backward. Maintaining this false hope is an act of deep self-betrayal. You are telling your subconscious that your current life is merely a waiting room. You are treating your present reality as a rehearsal for the moment they finally come back. This prevents any genuine connection with new people because everyone else is just a placeholder. You are devaluing your own time, effectively putting your entire existence on pause for a hypothetical scenario that has a near-zero probability of occurring. The next shift is simple, but not easy. You have to slam that back door shut and lock it permanently. You must kill the hope. It sounds harsh, but killing that specific toxic hope is the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself. When you completely destroy the possibility of their return in your own mind, the waiting room collapses. You are suddenly thrust back into the real world. It will feel terrifying for a moment, but that terror is the feeling of taking your life back. Slowly, as the hope dies, you face the final hurdle of the pain phase. You try to rationalize why it happened. You enter endless mental negotiations, trying to assign blame or figure out if you were not good enough. You replay your perceived flaws, wondering if being slightly different would have changed the outcome. This mental bargaining is a refusal to accept reality on its own terms. You are trying to use logic to untangle an emotional event that is already sealed in the past. Every minute you spend negotiating with the past is a minute stolen from your future. This habit drains your masculine drive. Instead of aggressively pursuing your goals, you are endlessly defending yourself in a courtroom that only exists in your head. The cost is your ambition. You become stagnant, defined entirely by an event you cannot change. You lose your edge, your sharpness, and your forward momentum because you are pouring all your resources into trying to rewrite history. This is not discipline, this is self-respect. You must fire the lawyer in your head. Stop arguing the case. It does not matter whose fault it was. It does not matter if you could have done better. And it does not matter what they think of you now. The verdict is already in. It is over. Accept the outcome unconditionally. Take the lesson and walk out of the courtroom. Your energy is meant to be spent building an empire, not defending a ruin. Turn your eyes strictly to the horizon. The first step out of the emotional fog is not finding a new relationship or achieving a sudden epiphany. It is establishing a brutal, uncompromising architecture of inner order. When your mind is chaotic, obsessed with a ghost, your external life usually mirrors that chaos. You let routines slide. You compromise on your standards because you feel broken. This lack of discipline acts as an incubator for the memory, giving it a messy, unstructured space to multiply and consume your remaining energy. The real cost is not what you lost. It is who you became while ignoring your own standards. By allowing your environment and your habits to decay, you signal to yourself that you are defeated. You wake up in a disorganized room, skip your physical training, and eat poorly, all while blaming the emotional weight of someone who left. This physical and habitual collapse only deepens the mental loop. You are building a monument to your own suffering, block by undisciplined block, and this is where clarity begins. You combat emotional chaos with physical order. You do not need to feel motivated to clean your environment, lift weights, or execute your daily work. You do these things precisely because you do not feel like it. The act of enforcing discipline when you're hurting builds a firewall against the memory. It proves to your subconscious that you are still the authority in your own life. You are replacing the unpredictable waves of emotion with the cold, reliable steel of routine. Once you establish physical order, you must secure your mental borders. The memory of the person who left feeds on exposure. It feeds on the names, the places, the old messages, and the conversations you have with mutual friends about them. You might think that talking about it is a form of processing, but past a certain point, processing devolves into preservation. You are keeping the ghost on life support by constantly injecting it into your present reality through words and lingering habits. The problem is not that you feel too much. It is that you keep obeying the urge to speak about what you feel. Every time you bring them up, you reset the clock on your own recovery. You are reopening a closed file, forcing your nervous system to relive the tension of the loss. This boundary violation ruins your focus and makes you tedious to be around. You trap yourself in a self-referential loop where your entire identity is temporarily reduced to being the person who was left behind. You must initiate a complete embargo on their name and the narrative of the separation. This is a strict boundary of silence. You do not ask about them, you do not look for them, and you do not explain the breakup to anyone anymore. The story is over. By starving the memory of external validation and vocalization, it naturally begins to shrink. You are cutting off the oxygen supply to the past. The silence will feel heavy at first, but that heaviness is the feeling of your energy finally staying within you. But this is only the surface. The deeper wound is not the loss of the person, but the collapse of the identity you built around them. When you are deeply entangled with someone, your ego merges with theirs. You define yourself through the lens of being their partner, their protector, or their confidant. When they vanish, they take that version of you with them. The disorientation you feel is not just grief, it is a profound identity crisis. You literally do not know who you are without them in the room. Most of the damage did not happen in one moment. It happened through repetition, through slowly handing over pieces of your independence to maintain the connection. Now, left alone, you feel entirely hollow. You try to resume your old hobbies or see your old friends, but it feels performative. The framework of your personality was so reliant on their presence that you feel like a stranger in your own life. You are wandering through your days, wearing the obsolete uniform of a job that no longer exists. The next shift is simple, but not easy. You must accept the death of that shared identity. Do not try to resuscitate the person you were when you were with them. That person is gone, and that is a necessary evolution. This is an opportunity for ruthless reinvention. You get to decide what principles, goals, and standards will define your solitary character. You rebuild your identity not around another human being, but around your own uncompromising values. You become a standalone structure. As you reconstruct your identity, you will inevitably hit the wall of blame. It is highly tempting to place the entirety of your current misery on their shoulders. You tell yourself that they broke you, that their actions caused this disruption in your life. This narrative is a comfortable trap. Blaming them makes them the author of your current state. As long as they are the villain who destroyed your peace, they hold absolute power over your emotional recovery. You are handing them the keys to your mind. This shifting of blame keeps you paralyzed in a state of victimhood. You wait for an apology that will never arrive. You expect time to magically heal you, absolving yourself of the hard work of active recovery. This lack of accountability keeps you weak. When you refuse to take responsibility for your current mental state, you signal to yourself that you are fragile and incapable of managing your own internal environment. You remain a passive observer of your own prolonged suffering. You thought you needed more motivation, you needed less noise and more ownership. You must assume absolute responsibility for your recovery. It does not matter what they did, how they left, or how unfair it was. The pain might not be your fault, but the healing is entirely your responsibility. When you accept this, the power dynamic instantly shifts. You stop waiting for closure from a ghost and start creating it through your own deliberate actions. You become the sole architect of your peace. This is where the real change begins. As you enforce discipline, silence, and responsibility, a new baseline emerges. You stop looking for external anchors. The desperate need to be understood, validated, or chosen by someone else begins to evaporate. You realize that the intense emotional states you experienced in the past were not gifts given to you by another person. They were biological capacities within your own mind. You always owned the machinery. You just mistakenly credited them for operating it. Before this realization, you were a hostage to your attachments. You lived in constant fear of abandonment, because your entire emotional stability relied on someone else's unpredictable behavior. That fear dictated your choices, made you compromise your boundaries, and eventually led to the mental loop you are breaking now. The cost of outsourcing your emotional regulation is a life lived in perpetual anxiety, always waiting for the other person to inevitably pull the rug out from under you. This is the quiet trap you have finally escaped. You are stepping into true emotional independence. You can appreciate a memory without needing to resurrect it. You can acknowledge a past connection without letting it dictate your present worth. You become a fortress of self-respect. When you no longer need another person to complete your identity or validate your existence, you become incredibly dangerous to manipulate and profoundly difficult to break. You are finally standing on your own ground. As the emotional noise finally settles, you are left with something highly valuable but dangerous if left unused: raw, unallocated energy. For months, or perhaps years, a massive percentage of your cognitive bandwidth was spent managing the ghost of this person. Now that bandwidth is suddenly available. If you do not consciously redirect this energy into something demanding, your mind will default back to its old habits out of sheer boredom. This is where people often relapse. They feel the relief of the empty space, but because they have no immediate purpose, the emptiness starts to feel lonely rather than liberating. You might catch yourself mindlessly scrolling or checking old messages, not out of profound grief, but simply because your brain is seeking its familiar source of friction. The absence of a demanding goal makes you vulnerable to the cheap comfort of your old mental loops. You must immediately deploy this reclaimed energy into building your life. This is the quiet trap of recovery. You think the goal is just to heal, but the goal is to conquer. Channel that excess focus into your business, your physical training, or your financial independence. When you are aggressively pursuing a massive objective, your mind does not have the luxury of reminiscing. You replace the obsession with the past with a relentless drive for the future. Even as you build this new life, there will be moments when the memory unexpectedly returns. A specific song, a scent, or a passing comment will trigger a sudden flash of the person who left. This is a critical test. Your immediate instinct might be to panic, to assume that you have lost all your progress and are back at square one. But this is not a relapse. This is merely an emotional echo bouncing off the walls of your nervous system. If you react with frustration when these echoes occur, you accidentally breathe life back into the ghost. By getting angry at yourself for remembering, you are treating the thought as a threat, and the mind always fixates on whatever it perceives as a threat. You end up spending the rest of the day fighting an invisible enemy, ruining your mood and your productivity over a completely harmless, temporary firing of old neurons. That is where the pattern ends. When the echo happens, you do absolutely nothing. You do not fight it, you do not analyze it, and you certainly do not judge yourself for it. You observe the memory pass through your mind like a car driving past your house. You acknowledge it and you let it keep going. This is the pinnacle of self-control. By refusing to react, you prove to your subconscious that the memory has lost all of its power over you. As you practice this non-reaction, you forge a deep, unshakable armor of self-control. You realize that you cannot control the initial thought that pops into your head, but you have absolute sovereignty over the second thought and the action that follows. This separation between the stimulus and your response is where true masculine strength resides. You are no longer a victim of your own internal weather. You are the solid mountain that the weather happens around. Without this armor, men are easily manipulated by their own nostalgia and the actions of others. They are constantly blown off course by a random text message from an ex or a wave of sudden loneliness. They abandon their principles for a fleeting moment of comfort, betraying their own standards to temporarily soothe a wound. This reactivity keeps them perpetually weak, always at the mercy of external validation and internal chaos, but you are building something different. You are cultivating a mindset where action dictates emotion, not the other way around. You thought you needed to feel better to start moving forward. The truth is, you have to move forward relentlessly until the feelings catch up with your actions. You put on the armor of deliberate action every single morning. You execute your duties perfectly, regardless of the emotional noise attempting to distract you. This level of discipline naturally leads you into a period of solitude, but unlike the beginning of this journey, this solitude is not a punishment. It is a profound achievement. You no longer need constant company to distract you from your thoughts. You have cleaned out the mental room, evicted the ghost, and you now find deep satisfaction in your own presence. You have transitioned from being abandoned to being intentionally and powerfully alone. The fear of walking alone is what keeps most people trapped in toxic loops and dead-end attachments. They will tolerate disrespect, indifference, and constant anxiety just to avoid sitting in an empty room. Because they cannot bear their own company, they negotiate their boundaries down to zero, accepting terrible treatment as the price of admission to a relationship. Their inability to be alone is the exact mechanism that destroys their self-worth. This is not discipline. This is self-respect. When you master the art of walking alone, you become incredibly dangerous to the people who try to manipulate you. You no longer operate from a place of scarcity. If a connection does not bring value, respect, and peace to your life, you are perfectly willing to walk away, because you know your own company is an excellent alternative. You find your ultimate security in your own unbreakable character. You finally reach a state of absolute finality. The mental loop has not just been paused, it has been completely dismantled. You look back at the memory of the person who left, and you feel nothing but a calm, objective acceptance. The emotional charge is gone. You do not hate them, you do not miss them, and you do not wish for their return. They have simply been downgraded from the main character of your suffering to a passing footnote in your history. This is the death of the old self. The person who spent hours agonizing over the past, who negotiated with ghosts and begged for closure, no longer exists. If you had held on to that suffering, you would have carried that weak, reactive version of yourself into the future, poisoning every new opportunity and every new relationship. The refusal to let go is essentially a refusal to evolve, trapping you in a perpetual state of emotional infancy. But peace does not come from escaping reality, it comes from mastering it. You have reclaimed your attention, rebuilt your identity, and fortified your mind against the seductive trap of nostalgia. You are no longer carrying the weight of someone who is not there. You stand upright, focused entirely on the path ahead, armed with the quiet, lethal confidence of a man who has conquered his own mind. You are finally entirely free. Thinking about someone who left is a natural human reflex. The mind remembers, it catalogs, and it attempts to find patterns in our past connections. But allowing that memory to dictate your current reality is a choice. You are not a victim of a broken heart. You are the owner of a powerful mind that simply needed to be redirected. The secret to breaking this cycle was never about forcing yourself to forget. It was about removing the emotional weight you assigned to the memory. You had to stop obeying the feeling, demolish the unlived future, and aggressively build a present that demanded your absolute attention. When you take complete responsibility for your own inner order, the ghosts of your past naturally fade into the background. They lose their power the exact moment you reclaim yours. Do not negotiate with what is already gone. Your energy belongs to the future you are building, not the past you are mourning. If this message brought you the clarity you needed today, subscribe to the channel. We are building a community of individuals who refuse to be ruled by their own minds. Stay focused, stay grounded, and never stop moving forward.